Hello and welcome everybody, this is Roland Hartmann from graphicinmotion.com, and in this tutorial I want to show you how to customize my watercolor and ink slideshow part 2 After Effects template. Before we get started with the customization, I quickly want to point out two things. First of all, if you take a look at the project folder of the template, then you see that there are two different After Effects project files included. As the name says, the first one is a 4K version of the template. That means that it has an Ultra HD resolution, and the second version is the standard Full HD resolution version. So depending on which version you want to use, please open up the according After Effects file. And one more hint, please be aware that the 4K version of course requires quite a bit of computer power to run smoothly and also needs way longer render times than the Full HD version. Before you open up one of these projects, I recommend that you download and install the font that I used for this project. You can find a link to the font right in the links folder. Just follow the link, download the font and install it on your system. Now you're good to go and open up one of the After Effects project files. For this customization tutorial, I use the Full HD version because it just runs a little bit smoother and it's better when I'm screen recording. But the customization works exactly the same in both versions and they look exactly the same. In the first part of the tutorial, I want to show you a quick standard customization. I will show you how to edit titles, how to edit colors, how to edit the footage, and how to edit the overall look. In the second part of the tutorial, I want to show you how you can change the duration of scenes, how you can add additional scenes, how you can shift scenes, and how you can build your own story with this modular structure of the template. So I quickly want to explain the advantages of this new template. First of all, the biggest advantage I think is that the template is now modular. If you take a look at this render composition, you can see that the whole animation is made out of scenes. So it's very easy to shift around scenes, exchange them, delete scenes, or add additional scenes to create your own slideshow and create your own story. In the old version of the watercolor and ink slideshow, everything was controlled by one camera and one camera movement with a lot of keyframes. So changing the duration of scenes and exchanging scenes was not that simple as it is now. Additionally to the modular structure, I also included a bunch of new controls. For example, if we take a look at this first scene here, where we have our main title and footage. If you select the footage layer and go to the effect controls, then you see you can now choose between different frame styles. So for example, if I change from square frame 1 to horizontal frame, you see that the frame size here changes. So you have a bunch of options changing frame sizes and frame layouts very easily for each of these placeholders. Another feature which is new in this template is the easy changing of textures. If we take a look here at the render composition, at the top level we have this texture setup layer. Here you can change the texture. First of all, we have the background texture. If I set the opacity to 0, I will make this a little bit bigger than you can see the names of these controls here. So I will set the background texture opacity to 0 and you will see what this does. It now creates a very clean style of this template. There's also foreground texture applied, which is now set to 40%. If I set this to 0%, you will see now I have really created a different look by only changing two values. So let's take a look at this layout and you see it now creates a very clean and cool looking slideshow. You can of course also change the background color easily through this first color control here. So now we could create maybe a completely new look for this template by only changing these three values here. If you're looking for a more crunchy look, you can of course add the textures like 100% for the background texture and 100% for the foreground texture, and you see what this does. Now you have this more contrasty and more texture-like look. And one more thing you can do with these textures is if we enter this composition by double-clicking quickly and then we choose this foreground texture layer, I can just close up the motion tile effect. This one is not important, but if we zoom in, and now you can see I also can change the textures style. So we have 8 different textures to choose from. Now the Grunge 2 texture is applied, and if I remove this and enable Grunge texture 1, you see that there are just a few different textures to choose from, which apply different looks to our composition. And the cool thing is you can change this in each scene. So you can add paper texture 1 at this scene and can add paper texture or grunge texture to another scene. So you see how versatile this is and that you can create really a bunch of different looks using these textures. For now I will leave it at grunge texture number 2 again. I think this was the one that we used. Yes. I will go back to my render composition and set this back to standard values of 40%. Okay, so now let's get started with the customization. First of all, I want to show you how you can edit the titles. Let's enter one of the intro scenes here. Let's say scene number 2. I double click on the layer in the render scene to open up the intro scene. Now I'm inside my intro scene, and what I can do now is I can add some title. And to change the title, you simply go to the intro title layer here, and you can double click this layer to open it up. And now we are inside our title. If you want, you can toggle the transparency grid to see what's going on. And now we can edit our title by simply double clicking one of the text layers. So simply double click it, and now you can enter your title. And of course you can also do the same with the second layer. Double click it. And now you see that our title doesn't match the brush, or the brush doesn't match our title anymore. And this is also very easy to fix. You simply select the according brush element, press S on the keyboard to scale it. Make sure that the constraint proportions is deactivated. And now you can change, for example, the X size, or you could also change the Y size and just scale the brush until it fits your title. If we take a look at the first text layer here, you see that we have a mask applied to it, and this mask controls the path of our text. If you want to get rid of this path, you simply select the layer, press M on your keyboard and delete the mask, and you see that now the title is just simply flat. If we undo this by pressing Ctrl and C, the mask appears, and now our title is following along this slightly bend of our brush stroke. Of course, if you do not want 2 titles in the scene, you can always disable the titles, or if you want more titles in the scene, you can add additional titles. To add additional titles, I recommend that you simply select a text layer and the according brush layer by holding down Shift. Now you can press Ctrl D on the keyboard to duplicate these layers. Let's drag them on the top here. And now I have created a new layer of text. What I could do now is I could add another brush. So let's go to our assets, and in the assets folder, let's open up the motion design elements. Here you can find all the elements that are included. These are quite a bunch. 32 brush stroke, paint splatters and watercolor stains that you can use in this project and also in other projects. So let's take a look. You see we have 2 different brush strokes here. And if I take brush number 1 with my brush number 2 selected here, drag it down, hold down Alt and release the mouse over this layer, it will be replaced. And now I could scale it again, deactivate the constraint proportions. I could scale it and create a new brush and maybe enter a bit longer title. And now we want to get rid of this mask here. And now you see I created a completely new set of titles. If I go back to my intro scene number 2 now, I will use my mini flowchart here to go back to my intro scene number 2. Now you see that the titles here updated. I could now position the title by selecting the intro title here and maybe move it up on the Y-axis a bit so that it's more in the middle, like so. And I created a completely new layout for my title. To change the color of these paint elements, you simply select these layers. Depending on the scene, there can be more or less of these watercolor elements. And if you select these layers, you see in the Effect Controls panel, we have this fill effect. If you are not sure which element you are currently working on, I recommend that you turn on and off this layer, and now you see which one this is. And you see this is this gray background element, and I definitely do not want to change the color of this one. The second one is also a slight gray background element. I do not want to change the color of this one too. And now you see I am in this turquoise element here, and I want to change the color of this. So let's say we want to make this more of a bluish color. So I simply change this color. And now I can move to the next element, and maybe I want to make this more of a pink color, a bit more saturated. And now you see what this does. We can move on to the next color element and increase maybe the saturation of this too, and create our own color setup. Of course, you can do the same with the splatters. You see the first splatter right here is the splatter in the background. If I turn it off, this will be more obvious. And I could now change the color from this very dark, nearly black color to maybe something really crazy. Let's try a really bright yellow. Let's see what this does. You see that you can create a really cool looks. If you do not like the color blending, most of these elements are set to a blend mode of multiply. So if we press F4 in our timeline, then you can take a look at the blend modes. And if you say, no, I do not like the blend mode of this yellow, I want this to blend normal, then change from multiply to normal, and you see that this will increase the intensity of the color. So let's move on to the next paint splatter. This is this one here, and let's get really colorful. So maybe I will add, don't know, a green here because we have no green yet. Okay, and we'll do the same here. We'll change the blend mode to normal just to make this pop out really, and I position it a bit. And now let's move to the last splatter. This is that one here, and let's add another intense color, maybe, I don't know, some orange. Okay, and you see that this is also set to multiply, so let's change this to normal too, just to make this really pop out in a really colorful layout. What I forgot to show you is you can of course also change the colors of these brushes. So you see we have brush color 1 here. If we change this to, I don't know, something violet or whatever, you see now both of these brushes change because I created a duplicate of this brush. So I can control my newly created brush also through this panel, and I can create or select another color for the second brush. And now I could of course change the text colors to, I don't know, whatever you want. You know, now it's getting really a bit crazy here, and it probably will not look that good anymore, but I don't care. I just want to show you the options that we have with these color controls. So you see, without much of an effort, I created a really horrible title layout here. Let's move on in the render composition, and let's take a look how to add footage to this slideshow. To add footage to the slideshow, you simply select the scene that you want to work with. In this case, we have scene number 2, and you see it's titled scene number 2, and we have the footage number 2 here, footage placeholder. So double click the scene to open it up. Inside the scene, you see they're all looking pretty much the same, with watercolor elements, with a title composition, with footage composition, some paint splatters, and these control settings that we talked about earlier. Now let's enter the footage composition by double clicking on this footage layer here. And you see now we are inside the footage pre-composition, and now you have to enter this composition one more time, so double click on this layer 2 to open this up, and now we are in the footage placeholder composition. To add footage, you simply go to File and choose Import File. Now we navigate to our pictures. And for this example, I will use this picture of this cactus with its red blossom here. It looks really cool. So let's scale this down a bit. And in my case, I also want to rotate it for 90 degrees because I want it to be horizontal and not vertical orientated. I could of course also use the picture vertically and then change the frame layout of this placeholder. I will show you this later on. So now let's scale this up so that it covers my placeholder. And now again, using the mini flowchart, I go back to my pre-comp. And now I could reposition and rescale my footage here. So select the layer, press S on your keyboard, and now you could scale it down, for example, a little bit, but do not scale it too far because you see then we get this ugly edge here, and we do not want to lose our nice organic color or paint splatter edge here. So let's scale it down to approximately this. I could now of course also shift it around to get some focus, to focus another area of this picture, but in this case I think that it's okay. And now again, using the mini flowchart, I go back to my scene number 2, and now my cactus is visible here. What we can do now is we can start manipulating the colors. I already showed you how this works, but let's go through this together one more time. I always recommend you to start at the bottom. And here you see we have this yellow element up here, and I will change the color of this yellow element to, I don't know, I will feature a color from my picture. Maybe I will take this darker color here. I recommend you to always feature colors of your pictures. Only if you want to create really artistic or colorful layouts, then you can of course choose whatever color you want. But I think it really looks cool, or most of the time looks really cool, to just sample some colors from the pictures. So down here with this light blue one, I will take this green. That makes not much of a difference. Up here we have this turquoise one and our sky color one, and I want to feature this red here to make it really intense. Okay, maybe I will take out the saturation a bit to get a bit of a contrast foreground and background here. That looks pretty good. So let's move on. Next one. We cannot see this one right now because this is one that is important during the build-up or the reveal of our footage. So let's take a look what this one here does. And you see it's not even very obvious right now. And now you see it comes in and it has this yellow color. So let's see how this looks with our footage. Actually, it is quite near to this blue, to this red blossom here. So I probably will take over the color of this blossom. So I select my layer and the color picker and select this bright red. And yeah, it looks quite good. Let's move on to the next element. And this is this violet one up here. So I definitely want to change this color. And here I will feature, I don't know, maybe one of these brown colors here. Looks quite good. Let's continue with the green one down here. Also change it to one of these colors right here. The next one is our pinkish one here. And now I want to take over maybe this dark red here to repeat it, or maybe make it a little bit brighter. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And the first splatter, we need red, of course, because here we have a lot of different reds in our scene. And the next splatter, which is down here, let's also take over one of the reds, maybe feature this red here. And then we have two more splatters to work with. The one up here, I will make this a little bit more subtle, so like featuring this color here. And now I think I forgot one of the splatters. Yeah, I forgot this one. So let's take over the green color right here. We could reposition it a bit. And last but not least, we can of course edit our title colors. If you want to edit the title, of course double click in the composition and start changing or adding your text. Let's go back to the scene and let's make this dark, because I think that creates a nice contrast, maybe even darker, like so. And if you like, you could now change the text color to this very bright yellow, maybe to repeat this color here. So you see, it's quite fast and easy to create really artistic layouts out of your photos, or of course also out of your videos. Another option you have to change the look of your footage is you can change the opacity of the footage layer. So let's select our footage layer here and press T on the keyboard to reveal the opacity. You see by default it is set to 75%. If I reduce this now to 0, you'll see that the footage is not disappearing, but it looks very different. So the style changes quite a bit. And this is because if we press this hide all layers guy here for a moment, there is another layer beneath our original layer. And this is set to a transfer mode. If I press F4, you can see this to hard light. And above this is our standard footage layer. This is set to normal. So depending on which of these two blend modes you prefer, you can mix them together. If I set the first layer or our standard layer, I will hide the other layers again because they are really not necessary to be visible. So if I set the opacity of my normal layer to 100%, it will overlay and cover up the hard light layer completely. So you won't see anything of the hard light beneath it. But if you reduce this opacity step by step, let's say 50%, you see that it gets a little bit more of an organic feeling and it blends together a bit more with the water stains, the watercolor stains that we use to create this artistic look. And if I reduce this even more, 25% maybe, then you see what it does. So you see in these areas where we have some watercolor stains behind our footage, these shine through a bit more, and depending on your footage this can create really interesting looks. So experiment with the opacity settings of your footage layers. The standard setting is at the value of 75%. Okay, so as I mentioned before, in the render composition you have of course the option now to change the overall look. We could now maybe create a more, I don't know, sepia look by increasing the background color or changing the background color to something like a little bit of a warmer color. We could add more foreground textures and create this really grungy and really contrasty look. Could even increase this a bit more to 100, and then you see now it looks pretty cool, pretty artistic. Of course, as I said, you can also reduce all these textures and create a very clean looking slideshow. So this is the basic customization. I think that I showed everything that is important. One more thing I want to mention, of course, if you want to change or if you want to add or remove one of these elements, you can move them around. As you see here, you can of course make them invisible. You can of course also, maybe if you want, rotate them. Yeah, and create your looks. But as I said, it's not necessary. The standard layouts, I think, are working very nicely with all different footages. One more thing I wanted to show you, I forgot. You can, of course, also change the frame of this photo. So, for example, if you do not want this horizontal layout, but we want a square layout, then we can simply deselect our checkbox of horizontal frame and check the square frame. And now you see that this changed. And sometimes you have to rescale the footage. So let's enter our footage composition. And now you see that I scaled down the footage to fit my horizontal layout. And now if I want to use the square layout, I would have to scale up my footage a little bit. Like so, for example, move it a bit. Now I can go back to my scene. And now you see my footage has this square shape. And now I could start shifting around these elements and create a new look here. So you see, by only shifting around these elements quickly and by changing the frame size from horizontal to square, I created a completely new layout of my scene. Okay, so this is it for the standard customization. And now I want to show you how you can change the duration of scenes. Let's say that this is not a photo, but a video file, and we want this to be a little bit longer than the standard duration of these scenes of approximately 5 seconds. First of all, enter the scene composition. So we want to change the duration of scene number 2. So we enter scene number 2 by double clicking. And now we choose the camera layer and press U on the keyboard to reveal the keyframes. Now you see here we have a simple 4 keyframe setup, and these keyframes control the transition between our scenes. So what we can do now is we can start shifting this. You see that now exactly on 5 seconds and 24 frames our animation is changing. So what I want to do now is I simply want to add, let's say, 2 seconds to my duration. So I will type in here 7 seconds and 24 frames and hit enter. And now my time indicator jumps over to this new point. Now I grab both of my keyframes, take the first one, hold down shift and snap it in place. And now I increase the duration of this scene by 2 seconds. I'll leave my time marker right here on this first keyframe, and then I use my mini flowchart to go back to the render composition. And now you see that my time indicator jumped to this new out point of our animation. What I want to do now, I want to select all the other scenes or all the scenes on top of this one here by selecting scene number 3, hold down shift and select the outro scene number 1. And now I want to line it up here, hold down shift and it will snap in place. Now I will move on 1 more second, because the transition always lasts 1 second, to 25 seconds and 6 frames here. And I want to extend my scene number 2. And if we take a look now, let's make a quick RAM preview. You will see that the transition between these 2 scenes is working very smoothly. So the RAM preview has finished now. So let's play it, and you see now the transition is still working, and we increase the duration of our scene number 2 for 2 seconds. Okay, so now I want to show you how you can shift the order of scenes. So let's say we want to exchange scene number 2 with scene number 6 and scene number 6 with scene number 2. We want to just change these 2 places here. What I would do here is I would select scene number 2 Then I go to my project folder and I go into my scenes folder, and you see that inside here we have all the scenes listed that are in my timeline here in my render composition. Now let's simply take scene number 6, because we want to exchange scene number 2 with scene number 6, drag it down, hold down Alt, drag it over the selected scene and release the mouse button, and you see now scene number 6 is here and here. Scene number 6 is now in this composition 2 times, so it's one time it's here and one time it's here. So if you add footage to these placeholders, it will appear in this scene and also in this one. You did not create 2 separated scenes, but you entered one scene twice. So now let's exchange scene number 6 with scene number 2. So same procedure, select scene number 6, select scene number 2 here, drag it down, hold down Alt and release the mouse key. And now you see that our scene that we customized before is visible right here. The only thing that we have to be aware of is that the duration of the scenes can vary. So, you know, we changed the duration of scene number 2, which is now replaced by scene number 6, and scene number 6 was longer than scene number 2. So what I want to make sure is that the transition animation is still working. Therefore I select the next scene, press I on my keyboard to move to the in point here, and you see the transition is happening too early here. So with my time indicator right here on this spot, I enter my scene number 2 now, and now I have to shift these 2 keyframes over, hold down Shift, snap them in place, go back to the render composition, and now you see that the transition will work fine. I want to do the same thing here, so let's select scene number 3, press I on the keyboard to move the in point right here, enter our scene number 6, and if the keyframes are not already revealed, select the camera layer, press U on your keyboard and shift these over, hold down Shift and snap them in place. And now you exchanged these 2 scenes and the duration and the transitions will work fine. So now I want to show you how you can add additional scenes to this slideshow. Maybe you want to display more than 12 footage scenes, then you have the possibility to use these additional scenes. You see inside the scenes folder we have this folder called additional scenes, and if I open this up you see that there are exactly the same scenes as they are already used in the slideshow, but these are additional scenes. So you can use all of these scenes and add them to your slideshow. So let's say what we want to do is we want to add another scene between scene number 6 and scene number 3 here. And let's say just for now I want to use maybe scene layout, the layout of scene number 9. So let's enter scene number 9, and you see that scene number 9 is this 3 footage setup here. So let's go back to the render composition. I want to add this scene in between my 2 scenes right here. To do that I would first of all duplicate scene number 6, select scene number 6, press Ctrl D on your keyboard. Now I move my cursor to the in point here by selecting this next scene and press I on my keyboard. Now I select all the scenes here, including the outro scene, shift them over to the new in point, hold down Shift to snap them in place. And now I select scene number 2 and I replace it with my additional scene number 9, hold down Alt, release the key, and now you see I added another scene. Now you can, of course, enter this scene by double clicking and enter the footage placeholders by double clicking here, enter your footage, and you added a new scene to your slideshow. If you want to remove the scene again, select the scene, press I on the keyboard to bring the time indicator to the in point, select the other scenes, shift them over, hold down Shift to line it up right here in the beginning, and now you can simply delete this scene and the scene is gone. So I will undo this quickly to add our scene again. So if you want to export your finished slideshow and if you change the amount or the duration of scenes, make sure that the work area is set up correctly. You see that my work area now ends right in the beginning here. That would mean that After Effects would only render until this point, what we do not want, because then we lose our outro title. So make sure that you select the last scene in your slideshow, press O on your keyboard to move your marker to the out point here, and then press N on your keyboard to set up the new end of the work area. And now you're good to go and you can render out your slideshow. One more thing that I forgot to mention before is, of course, if you want to add some audio, you can use the audio composition simply double click on the audio composition, go to File, import your audio to After Effects, and then just drag in your audio file into this composition, and then the audio will render with your slideshow. So this is it with this customization tutorial. I'm sorry that it is a little bit longer, but you see that this template is very versatile, has a lot of features, and I really wanted to cover everything in one tutorial so that you can really use all these advantages of the template to create your own projects. I hope that I didn't forget anything or that everything is clear. If you have additional questions, then please feel free to contact me through my VideoHive profile or also through my website, which is www.graphicinmotion.com. Of course, you can also write a comment in the YouTube channel if you watch this tutorial on YouTube. So thank you very much for watching. Have fun with this template, create some really nice slideshows, and I really hope to see you soon. Goodbye.